The day began the same as any other. From behind the desk on the main floor, I watched the hot, high-breasted teenage girls walk twitchingly up the wide flight of marble stairs that led to the main reading room. The stairs were an imitation of a staircase somewhere in Versailles. Though in their toreador pants and sweaters, these young daughters of Italian leatherworkers, Polish brewery hands, and Jewish furriers were hardly duchesses. So jump. I've got some.
Are you singing Jump? Are you singing Van Halen Jump?
No, I'm singing the Pointer Sisters Jump.
Okay.
Jump for My Love. Same era. Van Halen Jump was 84. Pointer Sisters was 83. Yeah, it's just what's in my head. Although I don't know all the words, so I just
know that. How do you? I mean, like, you know, I get it. We all hang on to dates for things that are important, but I would never be able to pin Van Halen's Jump to a specific year.
Well, the name of the album it's on is called 1984, so that does help.
1984 by George Orwell?
I think that's the name of that album. So that helps.
Is the Pointer Sisters album that is called 1983?
No, but it's called Breakout, and that one I know because I was intrigued by how similar the arrangements were to Madonna's first album and Stevie Nicks' Stand Back, and I was like, what's going on here? And they all came out the same year, and the best I can tell is that basically the Lynn drum machine and the Moog bass were both also just kind of like widespread that year and being tried out. So there were two new studio tools that were available to everybody, and those three albums all kind of make use of them. Although
that's great.
Yeah, although it's interesting because it's like, but there's also like there's like the upbeat aesthetic. So I'm still trying to learn more about it. I don't know if it's some kind of parallel convergence or if there's one producer. I do think that like,
that's interesting.
To some degree, maybe it was Prince's influence, because I think maybe Prince was one of the first to really figure out how to use the Lynn drum machine, and that Madonna, Stevie Nicks wrote Stand Back after hearing Little Red Corvette. And Prince played on the track and maybe even programmed the drums. So it
probably wrote it.
Well, she wrote the song based on a Prince song, and like it. So he's a co-writer on the song, but it's her lyrics and her melody, but it's based on his groove, you know. And if you think about Little Red Corvette, stand back, stand back. Da, 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 da. Yeah, and I mean, if you listen to the Pointer Sisters Jump, listen to Stand Back, and listen to Borderline by Madonna, and you're like, oh wow.
These all circle the same star.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I mean, you know, you could say the same thing about like Elvis, you know, Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis.
Carl Perkins.
Yeah.
The king. Yeah, you can't bring up Carl Perkins without a quick dip into Mystery Train.
And I think I already told you my story about meeting a very drunk Japanese executive producer of that film in Guatemala. Yeah.
Which is another one of your. There's a series of like Jesse Duke's wild, batshit crazy stories in Central America.
Yeah, you know, got a few more recently.
Well, should we get into Goodbye Columbus?
Yeah. We are talking about Goodbye Columbus, the 1959 novella, which is part of a short story collection of the same name by Philip Roth, written, I believe, when he was a college student or grad student at the University of Chicago. Very young version of Philip Roth. The protagonist is Neil Klugman. He's a librarian and a recent Rutgers grad. He lives in Newark, New Jersey. He works at the public library. He lives with his aunt and uncle in a small kind of working class neighborhood. I wouldn't call them poor, but there's not a lot of extra money around. You know, they got to economize about what fruit they put in their refrigerator, and they better eat it before it spoils. Definitely people who passed through the Great Depression and whose instincts remain. Neil meets Brenda Potemkin at the pool, and and he holds her glasses. He is infatuated with her, very attracted to her long legs and athletic build. And he bravely calls her for a date, somewhat charmingly, probably Neil's most charming moment in the entire novel. And they begin
answering my question about affinity.
They begin well, we'll get there. Yeah,
we'll get there. It's a little more nuanced than that.
Sure. I mean, Roth is good enough to make things you can never quite feel entirely one way. About anything. They begin a relationship that takes place over the summer while she's home for college. She lives in Short Hills, New Jersey, which is a affluent suburb outside of Newark with big houses. He has this running interaction at the Newark Library with a black, I want to say young teen, like maybe a 13 or 12-year-old boy who wants to look at art books. Neil spends some weeks with Brenda's family in Short Hills, kind of living the summer kind of country club life with them. Tolerated, I would say, by the parents who keep referring to him as Brenda's friend. Maybe gets
or Bill at
or
one
Bill.
point.
Neil, they are sleeping together. They are having sex, and Neil asks Brenda to get a diaphragm. As he says, for my pleasure, quote. She is resistant. This is a big deal in 1959. It's a big deal anytime, but it's an especially big deal. She doesn't think her parents will approve. I think she's probably intimidated by the procedure. But he is very pushy, and she eventually relents and goes to a well-known kind of early version of Planned Parenthood. I forget what it's called, but a well-known clinic of that sort in Manhattan. Gets diaphragm, and he's happy about that. The diaphragm is also, he says something like, he implies that he's kind of not bold enough to ask her to be his fiance. So to him, the diaphragm is kind of a stand-in. It's like, we're taking it to the next level. Brenda's brother, Ron, gets engaged and married in the course of the summer. Neil goes to the wedding and has a wonderful long conversation with Brenda's Uncle Leo and also a bunch of other kind of avuncular old Jews of the family.
It's a great scene.
Yeah. Brenda goes back to college to Radcliffe. This is when Harvard was not coeducational. And they maintain the relationship over the long distance, although Brenda is quite immersed in the world of college. She seems pretty devoted to him, though, but she is not able to come back for the Jewish holidays. And he's upset about that, but he decides to come visit her in Boston. While he's there, there's a conflagration. Brenda's parents have discovered the diaphragm in a drawer back home, and they're very upset. They send 2 wonderfully rendered terrible letters to Brenda. She and Neil have a fight in which Neil basically accuses her of accidentally on purpose letting the parents find out about the diaphragm. They break up. Neil looks at himself in the mirror and he looks at himself at the library in Harvard Yard, sees his reflection, wishes to shatter it with a rock, gets on the train in the wee hours and goes back to work on the first day of the Jewish New Year.
Yeah. Fiend. Yeah.
You got a reading.
Yeah, I got a reading. I figured, I remember reading, I actually remember reading the first paragraph of this book and feeling just so like, wait, this is what Philip Roth is like? Like it was my first experience with Philip Roth, and which is kind of wild that I didn't end up with like Portnoy's Complaint or something else before that, and I was so struck, because I knew it was in the 50s, and I knew that I was at a time in my life where I was like, okay, I know something about Philip Roth. I know that you get Judaism. I know you get sex, but I didn't think it was going to be so like impeccably rendered. And I remember reading this first paragraph and just being like, oh my God, like I didn't know that we were getting sort of the second coming of F. Scott Fitzgerald, which is how I felt. And this book does owe a lot of debt to The Great Gatsby in its sort of like themes and ideas and everything like that. Yeah. But I will dispense with the preambling and just read the first paragraph.
It's like The Great Gatsby if Nick was an asshole.
Yep, that's right, exactly. And if Nick's relationship with Jordan, I was like the golf player. if that were more like foregrounded and like Tom and Daisy
it's like yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you, but
you're
it's
totally
as though
right.
If
like,
Nick and Jay were merged into one character,
yeah, exactly,
and Jordan and Daisy were merged into one character,
and then I mean, we get this wild Harriet and Ron thing. I mean, we'll get there, but you're totally right. It's like if Nick and Jordan became the main characters, we dispense with Jay altogether, and Tom and Daisy were Ron and Harriet. I could see that, but and then the name of the book would have to change into like Goodbye East Egg.
Well, or wherever Tom Buchanan went to college.
Goodbye New Haven. Bringing up another. I think we're
getting a bit too deep. Give us your reading.
We're getting a bit too deep. The first time I saw Brenda, she asked me to hold her glasses. Then she stepped out to the edge of the diving board and looked foggily into the pool. It could have been drained. Myopic Brenda would never have known it. She dove beautifully, and a moment later she was swimming back to the side of the pool, her head of short-clipped auburn hair held up straight ahead of her as though it were a rose on a long stem. She glided to the edge and then was beside me. "Thank you," she said, her eyes watery, though not from the water. She extended a hand for her glasses, but did not put them on until she turned and headed away. I watched her move off. Her hands suddenly appeared behind her. She caught the bottom of her suit between thumb and index finger and flicked what flesh had been showing back where it belonged. My blood jumped. My God.
He's a badass. I mean,
he's such a badass.
And I will just put my cards on the table, and admit that as a human being, I despise Philip Roth. I find him to be a vile person. But I got to admit, he's a hell of a good writer. And I think maybe some of what will therapize with me tonight will also be like some grudging admiration for the value of his work, despite the fact, well, you're going to have a question about affinity, and so I think I'll save it to then. What do you admire in that?
I mean, just going back to what you just said about Philip Roth, you can really see how Philip Roth came up with Neil Klugman. Like that is a very, I mean, they're a hop, skip, and a jump away from each other, and yeah, I feel the same way about Roth, where I'm just very, very, very skeptical about him as a person. But I think the thing that strikes me so much about this paragraph is like, as a longtime reader of books and like somebody who like studies books and enjoys books and wants to know how they are put together, I could 100% like dive into this paragraph and do a close reading essay of just this. Yeah. The number of literary devices would be a lot. Like there's a lot that you could work with here, and he has clearly an incredibly well-tuned, even at this age, because he was in his like early 20s when he wrote this. Yeah. Just sort of a genius level with writing, but and what I'm saying is sort of with the architecture of writing, with the underpinnings of writing, with the aspects of writing in terms of like symbolism and diction, even sound. I mean, like she caught the bottom of her suit between thumb and index finger and flicked what flesh had been showing back where it belonged. The B's and the F's in that sentence are doing a lot. There's almost no long vowels in those entire sentences, so it's got this kind of dry punchiness to it that then sets up the next sentence, which is only 3 words long and is a punch to the throat. My blood jumped. And I think any straight young male will probably also understand what's going on here. But I think that those I think that paragraph is so smooth. You do not see the seams of the masonry. And I think it does an incredible job of setting up all of the themes of the book. Just like The Great Gatsby, there's a great theme of short-sightedness and myopia.
Possession.
That is,
and inability to see past surfaces. Yeah, I mean, and we get many, many physical descriptions of Brenda throughout the novella. Almost no descriptions of her as what I would call a person. Always descriptions of her as what I would call an object, and an object of desire and an object of aspiration. And it begins right there. And yet it is also, and I think this is why Roth is so difficult to contend with, it is, as you say, for a heterosexual man, it is relatable. And it is vivid. You're right there. And even, what we get very quickly after that is him picking up the phone with his aunt Gladys, and she says, like, Casanova, And,
I love Aunt Gladys.
And then, in what is like a glorious attempt to make Neil Klugman likable, I already said this, but his phone call to Brenda for the date is his, it is the, what's the opposite of nadir? It is the summit.
The zenith.
It is the zenith of his likability, because he's vulnerable and brave, and he plunges ahead, and he's not pretentious.
But still mean. But still
well, he gets mean just about right away.
Mean.
Yeah. And well, and I guess I'm going to put my cards on the table with this question too. I'm having fun with if you see my two questions for you, one is JPD question about virtues. The other is JPD other question about virtues.
Other question about virtues.
So, but the first question, and maybe in the more traditional sense, if you take this book, and I think you're on pretty firm ground doing this, knowing something about what I know about Philip Roth. Philip Roth, of all American 20th century writers, is probably the best known for using protagonists as author inserts. He's probably the most transparent about that. One of his, later protagonists is named Philip Roth. Nathan Zuckerman is the more common one, but he's pretty much always writing about himself. I mean, he creates little variations here and there. And he's not obfuscatory about that. He doesn't claim otherwise. And, he has a particular worldview, I think. If you've read enough of his things, you see certain themes that emerge, and you also see characters behaving certain ways, and you see characters failing to behave in other ways. And so with all of that in mind, thinking about either tone of voice or worldview, if this novel were to espouse a philosophy of life, what would you say Philip Roth is telling us about the good life? Or what constitutes a life well lived?
Got it. Okay, when you say the good life, what that puts me in thinking of is basically like the Potemkins. So I'm not quite sure if that's what you mean.
I really mean a virtuous life, a life well lived.
Okay,
what is the life to aspire to, that one should aspire to?
Oof. Okay.
You can strike virtue, a life well lived. I'll put it that way.
Life well lived. So what is Philip Roth in this book trying to tell us would be a life well lived? This is a tough question, man.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna try to work my way around to it. Because I think one of the central messages of the book is that why look at the destination if you can't afford the train fare? The exact thing that he says about the poor black kid who at some point is going to discover that the Gauguin book has been taken out, and he can't look at pictures of Tahiti anymore. And Klugman even says, why look at that if you can't afford the ticket? Because Neil can't afford the jump to the Potemkin social level. There's a bunch of reasons why. I think the biggest reason is himself, that he is so truculent and stuck in his ways and arrogant, but at the same time insecure. That he is the reason for all of the bad things that go wrong in this novel. And because, like you said, because we know something about Philip Roth, the person, it's hard to imagine that Neil Klugman is a satirical or character where we're meant to be like, like he can't make it to Short Hills. We should conceive some idea about the faultiness of ambition in this way, the faultiness of trying to transcend your class, ethnicity, and what you were born into. I think this book is talking about how difficult that is to do, because even when the Potemkins managed to make that jump, like a lot of nouveau riche, they carry these. Man, when you're talking about Roth, there are minefields everywhere. But I'm just going to kind of shoulder on. The nouveau riche sometimes carry some of their gauche sensibilities into their new world.
Yeah, they're like gangsters wearing tracksuits.
Exactly, right. Yeah, exactly. Gangsters wearing tracksuits in a very, very fancy suburb.
I mean, not literally, although they might literally wear.
That would be great if Ben Potemkin, that would be hilarious if he sort of dressed like James Gandolfini in his dressed down Tony Soprano moments.
What I mean by that is money is not enough. If you aspire to kind of the WASP ideal.
Exactly. So the life well lived, or a life, like, what is he trying to tell us about the life well lived? Gosh, I think this entire novella is a sort of torpedoing of the idea of the life well lived. Because what we mostly see is people attempting to depart their particular station in life, which is fine. Like we all should aspire to things. But a lot of the reasons that people aspire to change their status in this particular novel are not admirable ones. Like you said before, like Neil's attraction to Brenda is just an entirely objectified one. She is a body to be enjoyed. And I mean, and there's this one heartbreaking moment when she's asleep at the wedding. And he looks at her and says something like, I knew her, I didn't know her farther than I would know a photograph. And you're like, that's your own damn fault, you idiot.
And that's Neil's greatest moment of clarity also.
Yeah.
That moment.
Yeah.
That's the moment, in fact, where I'm sort of like, wow, that's like the most self-insightful you've been. Although, again, Neil is the narrator of this tale. So the reason that we're able to draw these conclusions is because there's a level of honesty coming from the narrator and presumably the author that is profound. Neil doesn't really sugarcoat his mistakes.
No.
I think I agree with you. I mean, I think if I were going to say the tone of voice is that there is no life well lived. And that really the best you can hope for, we're all in purgatory. And then we're going to die and the lights are going to go out. And the best you can hope for is maybe to kind of, take some pleasure in the poetry and sensual beauty offered by sex, avuncular drunk Jewish men, kids at the library. That's as good as it gets, because the scenes that are all dialogue with Uncle Leo and with the Potemkins at lunch with the little sister, some of those scenes are delightful, just delightful slice of life. And even though the characters are still behaving with insecurity and squabbling and bragging and all of these things, there is a delight to that. And I think Roth is telling us that's as good as it gets, that some moments are occasionally pleasurable and you should just try to enjoy those, because otherwise you're basically just cursed to be trapped by your own insecurities.
Yeah, and your own place in the world, which is which in this novella, like what you have been born into, whether it's ethnicity or race or class, like has a very, very, very firm grip on you. The only way that the Potemkins lift themselves out of the lower middle class is basically by getting a government contract to sell sinks to the army. And the other thing that you can look forward to is the nostalgia of looking back at your college graduation and thinking like, gosh, those were the days.
At 23.
At 23. And I mean, that's the reason why this book is why it owes such a debt to Gatsby. And then I would also say Michael Chabon's book, Mysteries of Pittsburgh, is so close to this, because like this book trades in nostalgia so powerfully.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, there's also stuff like, I mean, you can mine this book for symbolism and parable and imagery. It's the Garden of Eden. like they're literally in the house in Short Hills eating fruit and having sex. And and that is,
in the garden. Yep. In the garden state, in the small. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, it's like he's a criminal who does his crimes out in public, Roth.
Well, but I would also argue, that if Neil wanted, he could. I mean, he is accepted by the family. He's eventually rejected because he is a fraud, in terms of he's pretending to share their values, but he actually holds them in contempt. He, for not 1 second, regrets his sexual relationship with Brenda. His only the thing he's indignant about is that she didn't do a better job hiding it from the mother.
Oh my God!
I mean,
that scene is so cringy.
It is so hard to read, and so he wants to be accepted by people, but the way he goes about accepting, I mean, you can hear there's a moment where he's talking about, what kind of Jew he is, Orthodox versus conservative. And, the writing is great. And, you have this character who, it's almost comical, right? He cannot claim to be observant because he's not. And he's too much of a good liar and manipulator to know that he could get away with that. So he's trying to frame his poor observance in a way that will be ingratiating to Mrs. Potemkin. And he keeps, bumbling through this. And at no point does it ever occur to him to just be an authentic person. And and there are occasional moments where he does that with Mr. Potemkin, but it's calculated. He's like, maybe the best play right here would be honesty. That might get me something. And he's that way with Brenda, too. Like when he's arguing and trying to get her to get the diaphragm, his calculation is not, oh, am I asking too much? Is this upsetting to her? Is it scary to her? Was this an unfair request? It's all, oh, have I upset her? Then maybe I should back off a little bit and try again later. It's all calibrating the degree of pressure and manipulation to put on her. And again, it is to Philip Roth's credit that he narrates that brilliantly and realistically. And if you've ever been in that situation of wanting something from somebody and catching yourself thinking in those manipulative terms, well, that's what it's like. And it's disgusting, and one would hope that Neil Klugman would catch himself at it and aspire to something better, and he never does.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, like, this was the first time you read this, right?
It is, yeah. And I'll just say I had read Portnoy's Complaint, and I had seen the movie Elegy, which is based on his novel The Dying Animal, and that's basically it. I've read some essays by Philip. I've always found Philip Roth, like, I read Portnoy's Complaint, but basically, I've told you a little bit about dating somebody who was in an MFA program and encountering some of the corruptness of that program. And Philip Roth has always sat right at the center of, elder professors picking the prettiest, students to be their advisees and taking them out for a drink, all of that. But also the kind of dismissiveness of any other genre other than Philip Roth's genre, which is interior psychological realism about recognizable upper class contemporary literary life, which is what he writes, which is called literature. Literature. What it really is psychological realism about the sort of people who write books. Which is actually
usually set in and around New York City.
Set in and around New York City or some other like writing enclave, and often having to do with an affair, possibly death or both.
Yeah. So my question about experience was, like as this book was unfolding in your hands, like what was your experience like? Like just kind of narrate your kind of like reactions to the characters and the action and the writing. Like I was really curious about this because I knew it was your first time reading it.
Yeah. Just like kind of a pleasurable disgust. And like
definitely the episode title right there.
And kind of a like, I mean, I think I came in with a lot of baggage because what I just told you about Philip Roth, and I might not dislike Neil Klugman quite so much if I didn't have that Philip Roth baggage, but I do, and so there it is. But I also feel like Neil Klugman perfectly lived up to the sort of protagonist I expect in a Philip Roth novel. And then, so frustration, disgust, occasional moments of happiness and joy, particularly around the dialogic sections and also the sections where he's just kind of describing the landscape of New Jersey, and the cultural landscape, but also just the architecture and that sort of thing. A kind of desire to punch Neil Klugman in the mouth a lot. A brotherly affection for Brenda, like just basically want to like beat this guy up and keep him away from my sister, because Brenda seems pretty nice too. She's great. And like, if he could only see how lucky he is that she, somehow regards him. I had a lot of that. And then alternating admiration for Roth, and then but also alternating with a sense of like, man, I think your talent is kind of wasted, or maybe not. Going back and forth about that because well, and this will get into maybe my next question, which I'm sort of curious if you agree about, but it also relates to my first question, which is that I think that one of the reasons I read is because I want to be inspired in some way to be a better person. And I think that Philip Roth is basically saying there's no such thing as a better person. And there are other books that are about destructive, disastrous characters that offer more of a rope of hope, offer a little bit more of a glimmer. Hemingway's characters are shattered at the end or dead, but there's this spirit in Hemingway. It's this is a world that's worth dying for. You may have been mutilated by the war, but at least there's fishing and bullfighting. And Jennifer Egan, the characters are, Sasha's the closest author insert, and she behaves in ways that are very self-destructive, but there's always a kindness to that character, and that kindness ultimately grows, and her destructive behaviors ultimately shrink over time, and she holds out that possibility to us in a way, and there's none of that there. And I think, but I found myself kind of engaging in a debate with a dead man, because I think Philip Roth is saying, that's how the world is. We're animals. We lust, we envy, we manipulate, and then we die.
Yeah. And we can't leave our space.
Yeah. And so I just found myself kind of having that debate, And what's so powerful about his writing is that, you know, it's kind of like Tom Ripley, which is that Klugman is kind of right at the edge of, I don't like him, but every now and then I relate to him, and I don't like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, there's these moments where he, like the discussion with Leo Potemkin, which is, I just think, one of the most wonderful passages of the book, especially the part about him venturing up to New England and then continuing on and over the globe and down to Vladivostok. And then there's this like perfect, like exactly what you just said, like a perfect Rothian moment of like, but once you've seen, you know, like, once you've seen New London, Connecticut, what more could you actually ever see in Vladivostok? And you're like, plenty! I'm sure Vladivostok is an incredibly interesting place.
Yeah, and then also, and when you listen to it too, or read it too, you're sort of like, oh wait, like this guy is being presented in a sort of like affable, charming, it's a little bit condescending, but also charming. And you're like, he sounds like the worst father and husband ever, right? You know,
But Neil has a moment of tenderness towards him.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like there's a few moments like that scattered throughout the book, like with the black kid, where he like really like wants that kid to like still have access to the book, and the moment with Leo Potemkin. And I think those are the moments that sort of pull us. I mean, maybe Roth knew. Probably not. Probably Roth didn't know that he was making such an odious character, but maybe he
probably
did.
Yeah, I think he probably did. I don't think you could do it without. I think that's what any. Let's say that to be a good person and to live a good life requires a certain honesty. I would say that any capacity that Roth had for honesty, he funneled directly into his writing and not for the people around him. So he was a manipulative.
God, that's well said. Yeah.
You know, manipulative, lying, cheating, controlling person who was utterly honest about himself in his novels. And I think that pattern, and that's his superpower. And it's also his great redeeming virtue as a writer, because he does not, I don't think he lets Klugman off the hook at all. And therefore, you know, if we see him as an author insert, he doesn't let himself off. And, you know, even the affection, I mean, it's this sort of, you know, I feel like his affection for the black boy, it's almost like he's telling us to prove like what a good dude he is, like, you know, like white savior, like I'm going to save this poor, and it, the way he relates the kid sort of ignorance about libraries, there's a kind of comic, I mean, it feels a little racist to me. And he's like, this poor, stupid black kid doesn't know about libraries and I'm going to help him.
I mean, there is a self-hatred in Roth. Like there's like it's rough. There's a self-hatred and then there's also an outward hatred. And so it is a difficult experience because you spend the entire time of the book, like, as you said, pleasuring in the writing, and it's a really sad story. It's a sad, unfortunate story that is fashioned out of the shortcomings of the characters, which are like, well, yeah, fiction, like bad things have to happen to the only good person in this book is Brenda, and bad things happen to her because of Neil. But you know, what's your? I'm interested to hear the next question about virtues.
What is the virtue of relating a story about a character who is a bad person who remains a bad person?
That's such a wow. Okay, that's a great question. Because we wrestle with this question a lot, right? Like this is a question that comes up in film and books, music, all the time. Like how do we deal with the charming and irredeemable person? Like how do we make that work? I mean, for me, the virtue of a book that focuses on a bad person who remains bad, is that I do think it can tell us a truth, a cynical truth about the world, but there's still a truth nonetheless. That like, if you are in one of the marginalized groups in this world's history, and, you know, whether you are a poor Jew, a rich Jew, a black person. Pretty much everybody in this book is desperately trying to get out of their social class. The Potemkins have kind of escaped, but they pull with them all of the heritage of refugees.
It's like they're in a decaying low Earth orbit that they have to constantly be
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And like maybe they'll all die before that low Earth orbit fully decays.
Yeah.
Is sort of like the most that you can hope for. There's even a moment when Neil sees the Potemkins Leo and his wife come back from the bathroom, and he hands their daughter back to them. And the line is something like, they looked like sort of slope-shouldered refugees, and we could be back in Europe. We could be in Russia. We could be anywhere in any place where people have been marginalized. And I think in a lot of ways, the virtue of this book is the portrayal of that plight. It's one of the things that shapes all of the characters into who they are. Things are hard. Like, this is not an easy life for any of these people. The Potemkins have got out, but again, like, they're still who they were. It's like, again, there's this Gatsby-esque thing of like, no matter what you do, no matter how much you amass, you are still yourself. And so I think the virtue of this book is that it does a fantastic job of portraying a really difficult world. And, I wish that Roth weren't so unnuancedly negative because this book pushes it even for me.
Yeah.
Even for Chris Bagg, who glories in, stories where things don't work out.
I mean, yeah, you have an affinity for characters who are sort of failing their way or crashing their way into becoming somewhat better.
Yeah, exactly. And or even in some cases not, like one of the main characters of the Mysteries of Pittsburgh, like we don't get a redemptive arc.
Yeah.
I have sort of felt that changing. I think I told you an anecdote of some point in the last year of going and standing in front of my bookshelf one night looking for something to read and thinking, why on earth do I have so many sad books? But, I mean, like, I have also been sort of shaped by this world. Mm-hmm. Like I am trapped myself in my own, in the world of my own making, or not of my own making, of the circumstances that I was born into,
sure.
Which are very comfortable, but still there are aspects of it that lead you to a certain kind of self-effacement and some of the kind of self-hatred that you can see in Klugman. But I think the two virtues of this book are that portrayal and the absolutely pitch perfect writing, which is just astonishing. Like he gets so much into these 130 pages, like he's Melvillian, I would even say, mm-hmm. in his ability to ask the big questions in what seems like a sort of smallish plot.
Yeah, I just don't like his answers.
Yeah, I don't either, but the writing is to die for.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I do think you have people who followed in his wake who tried to take a kind of Rothian approach, psychological realism, heavy internality, mm-hmm. humorous writing, rhythmic prose, sort of like John Irving, John Casey, Updike, and then try to say something a little bit more redemptive with it. Mm-hmm. Like in Irving's world is the same. The characters are, they lie, they cheat, they have affairs, but they also take pleasure in family and friends, mm-hmm. and are capable of kindness and forgive each other and learn and grow. I think I haven't read as much Updike, so I can't really speak to that. Even, I mean, I think even Jennifer Egan sort of emerges from this tradition, and you have somebody who is at least optimistic about the capacity of, I mean, in Egan's world, like the arc of the characters in Visit from the Goon Squad is often they sort of, they have these kind of absurd redemption arcs where it's like, oh yeah, suddenly he becomes like a famous slide guitar player for toddlers who are pushing their parents' smartphones. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's still, you're kind of happy for him. And there's a bunch of moments like that. Well, and I think this speaks to exactly what you just said, which, and what I was saying, which is that, like, I find a disgusting worldview rendered beautifully. So this is about early on, maybe second or third chapter. This is after he's met Brenda and they've started dating, and he's going to work. The pale cement lions stood unconvincing guard on the library steps, suffering their usual combination of elephantiasis and arteriosclerosis, and I was prepared to pay them as little attention as I had for the past 8 months, were it not for a small colored boy who stood in front of one of them. The lion had lost all of its toes the summer before to a safari of juvenile delinquents, and now a new tormentor stood before him, sagging a little in his knees and growling. He would growl, low and long, drop back, wait, then growl again. Then he would straighten up, shaking his head. He would growl and say to the lion, "Man, you's a coward." Then once again he'd growl. The day began the same as any other. From behind the desk on the main floor, I watched the hot, high-breasted teenage girls walk twitchingly up the wide flight of marble stairs that led to the main reading room. The stairs were an imitation of a staircase somewhere in Versailles, though in their toreador pants and sweaters, these young daughters of Italian leatherworkers, Polish brewery hands, and Jewish furriers were hardly duchesses. They were not Brenda, either, and any lust that sparked inside me through the dreary day was academic and time passing. I looked at my watch occasionally, thought of Brenda, and waited for lunch, and then for after lunch, when I would take over the information desk upstairs, and John McKee, who was only 21 but wore elastic bands around his sleeves, would march starchily down the stairs to work assiduously at stamping books in and out. John McRubberbands was in his last year at Newark State Teachers College, where he was studying at the Dewey Decimal System in preparation for his life work. The library was not going to be my life work. I knew it. Yet there had been some talk from Mr. Scapello, an old eunuch who had learned somehow to disguise his voice as a man's, that when I returned from my summer vacation, I would be put in charge of the reference room, a position that had been empty ever since that morning when Martha Winnie had fallen off a high stool in the encyclopedia room and shattered all those frail bones that had come together to form what in women half her age we would call the hips. I had strange fellows at the library, and in truth there were many hours when I never quite knew how I'd gotten there or why I had stayed, but I did stay, and after a while waited patiently for that day when I would go into the men's room on a main floor for a cigarette, and studying myself as I expelled smoke into the mirror, would see at some moment during that morning I had gone pale, and that under my skin, as under McKee's and Scapello's and Miss Winnie's, there was a thin cushion of air separating the blood from the flesh. Someone had pumped it there while I was stamping out a book, and so life from now on would not be a throwing off, as it was for Aunt Gladys, and not a gathering it in, as it was for Brenda, but a bouncing off, a numbness. I began to fear this, and yet in my merciless devotion to my work, seemed edging towards it. Silently, as Miss Winnie used to edge up to the Britannica. Her stool was empty now and awaited me. I mean, it's hilarious. It's epic. He's an asshole. He, you know, he manages to insult everybody he describes. He manages to do it in a kind of dismissive, comical way that makes you chuckle and then feel guilty for chuckling. And then he lumps himself into all of these people. There's a kind of, I mean, again, it's his one great virtue, which is that he's insulting of everybody, including his stand-in, you know. He's not, nobody is spared the Roth treatment, and especially not Roth.
And that, I mean, it's just that passage again, just like everything else that we've talked about, is so dense with ability. Like he is like, you know, he's
like Melville.
He's like Ohtani. He's like, yeah, sure, I can pitch 6 innings of no-hit baseball, and I'm also going to hit 3 home runs tonight.
Yeah.
Like it's unreal, and especially that killer close of her edging up to the Britannica. And, you know, and it's so just like, again, the figuration, like, okay, we're actually talking about like a literal set of encyclopedias. Yeah. We're also talking about all of human history, or at least the stand-in for Western human history, which comes in for, like you just said, judgment, and getting fun poked at it, and and torpedoed, and it's like folks, if you listen to this book, almost every paragraph is like this. It's incredible, and the dialogue is equally as good, and it just it's the reason I brought it is because I feel so conflicted about loving it.
Yeah. What do I want to say about that? Well, I mean, one thing I want to say is earlier you said that life was hard for these people and they were limited. Yeah. And I think that's true of the Potemkins. I think it's true for the elder generation. I don't really think it's true for Brenda. It is true for Brenda because she's a woman in this era. Yeah. But the one person it doesn't really feel true for to me is Neil Klugman. I mean, he has a college degree. He doesn't pay rent. Sure, he has this kind of tragic comic existence with his uncle and aunt, but he could probably afford his own apartment. He's saving up. He's got a trajectory. His job isn't all that bad. He works at a public library. Sometimes he's at the reference desk. I mean, in the history of human jobs, sitting at the library, interacting with people, being surrounded by books, helping people get to books is like... I would imagine that like 99% of humans who have ever lived would be perfectly happy with that existence. With that job, like compare that to working in a factory, compare that to like farming a rice paddy, compare that to hunting woolly mammoths. I mean, maybe I'd rather hunt a woolly mammoth or selling light bulbs. I mean, I think that Klugman has it just fine. Sure, he's not rich, but the only reason he cares about that is his own sense of inadequacy, and maybe that comes from being a Jew in America in the mid-century, which was deeply still anti-Semitic. Maybe it comes from something else. Maybe it's not entirely his fault that he's inherited it, but he also, I mean, he's got this kind of smug, condescending attitude towards this elder generation who fought the war and had to scrap to make their living. And what did he do? He went to college and got a job at the library. I mean, he's fine.
Do you think he escapes the library? Do you think Neil Klugman does he rise above the fear in that passage that you just read that he is going to get stuck there?
Well, okay, so what does the novel tell us? Let's look at the last page to answer that question. Okay, so he's going to smash the reflection in the glass. What was inside me that had turned pursuit and clutching into love and then turned it inside out again? What was it that had turned winning into losing and losing, who knows, into winning? I was sure I had loved Brenda, though standing there I knew I couldn't any longer. I knew it would be a long while before I made love to anyone the way I made love to her. With anyone else, could I summon up such a passion? Whatever spawned my love for her, had that spawned such lust too? If she had only been slightly not Brenda, but then would I have loved her? I looked hard at the image of me, at that darkening of the glass, and then my gaze pushed through it, over the cool floor, to a broken wall of books, imperfectly shelved. I did not look very much longer, but took a train that got me to Newark just as the sun was rising on the first day of the Jewish New Year. I was back in plenty of time for work. You know, if I didn't know what I know and dislike about Philip Roth, I might actually take that as a somewhat hopeful ending. I might actually take it as a version of Hemingway's The Sun. It literally is The Sun Also Rises. You know?
Yeah, totally. It is. Tell me why. Tell me why you find that. Why you find it, if we divorce our understanding of Roth from this passage, take me through how that could read as a positive.
Well, one interpretation of this is that he's upset at himself because he has lost in the game that he has set for himself, that he's not played his cards properly and lost. Another interpretation of this, what is it inside me that it turned pursuit and clutching into love and turned it inside out again? Perhaps what he's saying is, okay, so first I wanted to possess this woman, then I fell in love with her, and then the mistake I made was continuing to want to possess her. Maybe it's a little bit hard. What was it that it turned winning into losing and losing, who knows, into winning? I mean, it's complicated, but maybe he is realizing the degree to which he caused the relationship to end by trying to possess and control somebody without any regard to their feelings and their humanity. If that is a realization that he's having at 23, and then he's looking and seeing the books improperly shelved, maybe that's enough for 20. He has enough time in his life to become a better person. And he's been given an insight, and certainly I behaved poorly in my 20s in ways that I probably wouldn't today. So the problem is that I know that Philip Roth didn't become a better person.
Right, totally. Yeah. And like, I don't know. I find I think he does get stuck because I think Neil's tragic flaw is his arrogance. And I could sort of, I think that he's going through the same thing that Leo Potemkin, that he levels at Leo Potemkin, waking up the next day and getting on the train and burping up the champagne and savoring the flavor of burping up the champagne. That's one of the lines. And he has this whole back and forth about turning winning into losing. I think you're totally right. But we don't actually get an epiphany. Like, what happens is he looks at his reflection and then looks through it and is like, those books could be better shelved. And then he heads home and he makes it back in time for work. And I don't know, maybe it's me wanting bad things to actually happen to Neil and not just Brenda. But I think he gets stuck at the library.
Well, but also let me just say, you could write that entire scene that I read from the library in a completely different tone of voice and mood. It's a beautiful public old building in Newark with lions and kids coming in to read books and people who are interested in art. I mean, he sees a bunch of teenager girls and all he could think is they're high-breasted and hot, but not quite as hot as Brenda, as opposed to look at these children who are interested in reading, by God, which is what a healthy, mature adult would think when they saw a bunch of teenage girls. Maybe you would note, oh yes, they're objectively attractive, but there's no protectiveness, no sense of oh, these are children. It is just lust. And it is and all he sees around him is sort of bitter, aging people, as opposed to people who probably have some interesting stories and some wisdom and some knowledge. Miss Winnie is probably a smart lady, but all he can see is the fact that she broke her what would be called on a younger woman hips. So I don't think it's the library, it's himself. He could work in the library for the rest of his life and have a great life if he learned to appreciate other people and learned to appreciate his own circumstances. And I did, and he does say, what was it inside of me that had turned pursuit and clutching into love and then turned it inside out again? If he could answer that question.
If he could, yes. If he could actually find his way to answering it.
Yeah.
But I don't think he does.
Trivia.
You're up.
All right. Well, I was feeling kind of angry at Philip Roth. So, okay. According to Roth's ex-wife, Claire Bloom, who wrote a memoir, which controlling or manipulative or otherwise disturbing behavior did Roth not engage in? So I'm going to give you 4. One of them is not true.
Okay.
A, insist on the right to veto. Claire was an actress. Insist on the right to veto any of Claire's acting roles on the basis of whether she was cast alongside former lovers or people he suspected of sharing a mutual attraction with Claire. B, make a pass at a 19-year-old friend of Claire's daughter, Anna, and then leave an angry letter for her in plain view when she rejected that pass. C, after their divorce, send Claire a bill in which he values his time at $125 an hour and demands compensation for the notes and editorial advice he gave her on her writing projects. Or D, forbid Claire's daughter, Anna Steiger, who was 18 and lived with her mother, from living with the couple.
Jesus Christ.
Let me know if you want this again. I'd be happy to read them again.
Oh my God. It's just so disheartening that 3 of them are true.
I know.
Oh my God. D.
Forbid Claire's daughter, Anna Steiger, who was 18 and lived with her mother, from living with the couple. No, he did do that.
Oh my God.
He did not
Jesus.
insist on... Well, as far as I know, he did not insist on the right to veto any of Claire's acting roles on the basis.
I thought that was a shoo-in.
Well, he may very well have done so, but it is not documented.
It's not
in the
established
memoir.
in the...
Yeah, and he might have just groused about them as a, which feels very Rothian. He might have just given her a hard time. Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those... Yeah, I mean, this is one of those writers where, like, it's really hard to separate the art from the artist.
Well, because he doesn't.
Well, he doesn't, but also, like... It's just so bad.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really, really bad.
Another thing that I don't particularly like about them is that he routinely slept with his female students, dozens of them. I'm not going to object to a 50 or 60-year-old man sleeping with 19 or 20-year-old women because women have the right to make their own decision. What's adulthood if women can't make their own decision about that? But when you're talking about the mentorship relationships between old writers and young writers and the entree, there's a real creepy power dynamic there
totally.
that I think creeps on to the spectrum of sexual violence of some kind and manipulation. So it's possible that Roth is worse than his characters.
All right. Well, so at any time in any book that a character's name is blank man, and we're thinking about Willy Loman from Death of a Salesman, you gotta pay attention to. We gotta investigate some of those possible meanings. Does Klugman in German mean A, pious man, B, rich man, C, clever man, or D, albino spacefaring man?
I'm sorry, give them to me again one more time.
The real ones are pious, rich, or clever.
I'm trying to do some linguistics. Klug. I'm tempted to say clever because of the CL connection. Klug, clever. I think that's bait, though. I mean, rich man would be the most ironic. Pious man would be wonderfully ironic. I'm going to say rich man.
It is clever man.
Oh, good job.
Yeah, what is that? That's sort of like it's like a double agent turn.
Well, Neil Klugman is too Klug for his own good,
He is too Klug for his own good. And I think his cleverness eventually does fail him.
Yeah.
I think that's the other part of why I think he gets stuck at the library is I think that Neil is not as smart as he thinks he is.
Well, I mean, he's plenty good at manipulating people. But ultimately that is not a skill that will... if what you want is a loving relationship with somebody, that skill will ultimately not work in your favor. Chris Bagg, are you going to read this again?
Yep. Totally. It seems about every 10 years, I get a hankering for that first paragraph. I get a hankering for the scene where they're eating fruit and he cracks his poor colon. I'll get a hankering for Ron Potemkin falling asleep listening to his graduation Goodbye Columbus records. Like, it's the writing is too good for me to not read this novel once every 5 to 10 years. Well,
I feel differently. For me, it's sort of like a colonoscopy. Like, it's like you should probably do it, but like it's not pleasant, and I don't want to do it again unless I have to. But you like that one,
man? I love that one. Your earlier description of your reading experience of pleasurable disgust is also just absolutely top drawer. There are many moments I found admirable, but I just don't like living in this moral world. I get it. Yeah.
And there are other writers out there, not many, with a similar level of talent who have something more profound to say, and I'd rather spend my time with them.
Yeah, I'd rather go read Michael Chabon.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna do,
or Fitzgerald.
Yeah, totally. Well, next up, everybody, this is not Deja Vu, but we are considering Goodbye Columbus, the film, directed by Larry Pierce. It's a 1969 film. I didn't check where you could stream it. Do you know where you can stream it?
No, because the LA Public Library has it. So I put it on hold. I did not do that research.
Looks like you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on YouTube, Apple TV. Yeah, you can get it in most of the normal places. This should be pretty easy to find.
I'm really intrigued by this, especially since the art makes Neil Klugman look sort of charismatic. So I am super... Yeah. And you could do a version of this movie... I don't know. I mean, this is one of those stories where you can layer a lot of your own meanings on it. So I am very curious to see this. And also 1969, what a year for film. I mean,
that's one of the great years. That's 2001.
Yep. 98.
What else? What else was 69?
Oh, let's see.
A lot of really good stuff.
Bonnie and Clyde, was that 69?
Shit, really? Wow.
Yeah, 2001.
The 39, 69, and 99 are the big ones.
Easy Rider, 1969.
That's right.
Midnight Cowboy, The Wild Bunch.
Butch Cassidy.
Yeah, great year. True Grit.
Wow.
Although I think and looking at this, Goodbye Columbus was the 10th highest grossing film that year.
Got it.
Which is
the poster is hilarious.
Quite successful.
Neil Klugman looks like Tobey Maguire.
Yeah. Yeah, which is like not who I would cast.
Nope.
On that note, Upper Middle Brow is a Small Point production. Chris Bagg and Jesse Dukes are your public librarians. Music by Ben Pajak and Jesse Dukes. Design and website by Chris Bagg. We are supported by Jenny Grieve and Justin Reich. Find us on Patreon, where there are a number of tiers at which you could show your support. There is a link in the show notes.
And as a reminder, Jesse and I are both writers and editors, and we can help you with your writing, podcasting, or editing project. You can see some of our portfolios and learn more at our respective websites, chrisbagg.com and jessedukes.com.
See you at Goodbye Columbus again.
Thanks for listening, everybody.